morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Mychal Bryan podcast. I'm your host, Mychal Bryan, and joining me today, all the way from California, is Ms. Gloria Goldberg. Gloria, thank you so much for being here.
Very welcome.
This is a podcast where I bring you interviews from leaders and teachers from within the yoga and the mindfulness-based healing industry from all around the world so that they can share with us not only what has brought them to their practices, but how they continue to hold true to those practices today. So if you want to be a part of the momentum that we're building here on the Mychal Bryan podcast, please feel free to go down below, subscribe to this YouTube channel, as well as share this podcast with your other yoga loving and mindfulness loving friends so that more and more people can hear about the amazing work that these teachers and practitioners are doing. Now, Gloria, once again, I'm so thrilled to have you here. I don't think that you recall, but the first time we met was, I think it was the Menses. Lois was having a Menses program a couple of years ago, and you were there, and a lot of people were there, but you were there. And do you remember the sort of shoes that you wore that year?
No.
You had a pair. I don't remember if they were gold or if they had sparkles or there was something.
Oh yeah, I still have them.
There was something really unique about your shoes, and everyone was so fascinated. And they were like, "Oh my God, that's Gloria Goldberg! And do you see her shoes? Her shoes are so amazing." And so both you and your shoes were definitely one of the highlights for me that year. But I'm so thrilled to have you here because I know students of yours who speak about you so highly, and Lois, my teacher, has spoken about you so highly. And I'm really happy to be able to sit here and have this conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank all of them.
You're very, very welcome. All right. So Gloria, first thing is you're no longer in La Mesa, but you're now somewhere else in California. Are you a native Californian?
No, I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and then my parents moved due to job moving to Chicago. So I went to school there. I guess you'd call it, they don't have middle school there, so high school, and then went off to college in Peoria, Illinois, and then returned to Chicago after a while. I stayed in Peoria for a while teaching elementary school, and then returned to Chicago. And then sometime in 1973, friends of mine were moving to the West Coast or going to the West Coast. And my other friends said, "You should go with them because you don't belong here. You belong in California." So I went, and that is pretty much, I guess you could say that's pretty much my life, is flowing with the river of the universe. If it's right, it flows easy. If it's not right, obstacles come in your way. And if there are too many obstacles, or if there's an obstacle that you have to, not that you shouldn't work on obstacles, but some obstacles are such that they're saying, this road is blocked for you. Don't come here. So when it's easy, and go with the flow, they used to say.
Definitely. Now, Gloria, that's so interesting because it sounds like you already had a teaching background, and you said you were teaching elementary school, and that's something that you got into while you were still living in Peoria. So what led you into teaching as a profession to begin with?
I went to college because my father wanted me to go to college. I didn't go to college because I wanted to go to college. I wanted to go to work. But okay, so I went to college and I took psychology courses, education courses, and ended up with a degree in education and a minor in psychology. So, and then Peoria was okay. So I got a job, you do student teaching, and the school offered me a job teaching there. So I did. I stayed. I was there for maybe teaching there for 2 years, and then I returned to Chicago. My family was there. And I started working there, not in education, but in government, actually. In the 70s, there were these CETA programs, they were called CETA, and I can't even remember what it stood for. And we were hired to oversee that the programs that were given money to do certain things, to accomplish certain things, actually did those things. So I did that and did not make many friends because I'm one of those people who turn people in when they don't aren't, they're taking taxpayer money and they're not doing what they're supposed to do, and we're supposed to report that. So I did. Don't make friends that way.
It doesn't sound like it, but it definitely but it definitely is an interesting follow through in terms of just in terms of the Iyengar Yoga that we're ultimately going to come and talk about, the fact that you already have this background in education, because I think it's so important for people who teach to actually understand how to teach. And I think within Iyengar Yoga, we're really keen on teaching people how to teach. But how do you think your teaching background would have impacted your ultimate life's decision to teach Iyengar Yoga?
I don't think it did it at all. I really don't. And I want to correct your statement about in Iyengar Yoga, how did you put it? I forgot how you just put it about our.
I think I said we teach people how to teach.
Actually, we teach people Iyengar Yoga. We teach people yoga, and this is how it should be. People learn, and because they love what they're learning, they want others to. They want to share that love and that energy and whatever they're getting out of the subject that they're studying. And so one of the ways to do that is to teach. I never decided to teach. That wasn't Gloria didn't sit down and go, I think I'll teach yoga. I was a student. I was a student for many years. My first experience with yoga was in probably 1969, when I decided that I needed to do something to help myself be a healthier person, because I'm asthmatic. Once you're asthmatic, I think you're always asthmatic, even when you have no symptoms and you've been, free of asthma attacks and everything. Thank you. And so I went, and I was still living in Chicago, and these new stores started to open. They were called health and nutrition shops or stores. And so I went into one near my house and was perusing through the books, and I found a yoga book, Hittleman's 28-Day Yoga Exercise Plan, which sounded just fine with me because it was 28 days, I could give it a try. And a nutrition book, which helped me to become, made me see that diet was really important and how that affects your biology and therefore your health and well-being. And took me, I don't remember the name of the book, took me through stages of, becoming a vegetarian so that you're not going, so to speak, cold turkey with no turkey. So I took those books and went home. And at that time, I had changed jobs and I was working at night, actually, nights. We started at 6, finished at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And then fellow people you work with, we'd go out for breakfast because it was morning. And then I would go home, do whatever I needed to do, and then I'd practice. And so now it's like 6:30, 7 in the morning. So, and I did that practice each day, day 1, day 2, day 3 to day 28, and start all over again. On the 29th day, go back to day 1. And, I did that for months. And the thing is that repetitive practice, and I knew nothing about the philosophy of yoga, but I found that repetitive practice made the practice freer, easier, less effortless as we went along. But I also learned. So whether there was something in me or I don't know how to explain it, but whatever asana at the time I was doing, I felt what was going on in the doing. And I could feel when something didn't feel right. So I would experiment to see what felt better. So for many years, I was taught by a book that I didn't know much about, and me, or whatever that teacher is inside. So, for some, I think teaching is within you. And for others, teaching is very difficult. It's as though it's something that you have to follow some prescribed regimen or something. But Guruji never talked to us like that. For teaching to him was teach who's in front of you and they will guide you. So it's really the student. I mean, once you understand what you're teaching and why you're teaching it, what you see in front of you will give you the feedback for what to teach next, and we call that correction or adjustment or nowadays. Of course, and then I knew nothing. So
Gloria, this path from finding, what was it, Hiddleman's 28-day yoga exercise plan.
It's still one of the major books sold today.
Wow.
And it was long, I'll talk to people and I'll share that with them and they go, I started with that book too. So, and that was in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And, maybe only a very few even had heard about BKS Iyengar. I don't know exactly when Patricia, or I don't remember, maybe you remember when Lois started, because she was very young. By that time in the 60s, I was in my 20s, late 20s. So 44, 54, 64 is 20, and late, 69, I was 25. So, and then going into the 70s, by 74, I was 30. and I had just moved to California and only been here a year. I went with my friends to LA, and I left LA the next day. There was no reason to be there. It was just too intense. And I moved to San Diego. My friend had a sister here, and so I was able to, be with her at the beach, which was very nice. It was very nice. So, and I started work there after I did whatever work I could, and then I applied for a job at the Ocean Beach Community Center as a social worker. So I had a degree in education and psychology, and I seemed to be able to organize things. So they hired me. It was a big job at $450 a month.
Wow.
So,
and even back then, was that $450 a month considered to be a little bit of money?
No, it was considered to be, average. I mean, even when I was teaching elementary school in Peoria, we made like $900 a month. Teachers never got paid well.
So at what point in time between Hittleman's 28-day yoga exercise plan and you doing that by yourself, at what point did you come into Iyengar Yoga? What was that journey like?
So I was in San Diego. I was living in San Diego and working at this community center. And one of the co-workers, a young man, and I did start teaching. I didn't know what I was teaching at the community school. I would teach once a week some yoga classes to whoever. And one of the students and a neighbor in Ocean Beach said, "You have to come to this class. I'm going to this yoga class and it's amazing. And you have to be there tomorrow morning at 6:30 in the morning." So I said, okay. So I was there at 6:30 in the morning, and the teacher was Jenny Snick Levins, a wonderful, wonderful teacher. And that was it. It just struck me that this was what I was looking for. It was detailed enough. It was movement enough. It was still enough. It was interesting, and everything that you could want to have at 6:30 in the morning till 8 o'clock and then go to work. So every morning that they had a class at 6:30, that's where I was. And then maybe, I don't know, sometime during the 6 months later or something, I wanted to add a class. And so I asked to be able to attend class with Mary Dunn, because she was the senior teacher there. And so I did. I went to class there also. And I think I told you when we were talking earlier that I really hadn't been teaching. I certainly hadn't been teaching Iyengar Yoga, and I never thought about teaching Iyengar Yoga. It just seemed like you had to have years and years and years of understanding and practice before you could become a teacher. Sometimes, I guess, and this has happened to me also with a student or two, the teacher sees something in you or something about you and either suggests to you, you should become a teacher, or they do something interesting, like I told you Mary did. And we got towards the Sarvangasana class, which is towards the end of class. And she said, oh, I forgot, I have to leave. I have to go. Gloria, finish teaching the class, which I had no idea. She said, teach Sarvangasana and some variations and Shavasana and you'll be done. So I did. She didn't have to go anywhere. She was watching from outside the door. And so she said, she told me, you ought to consider becoming an Iyengar teacher. But of course I had a job that, a social work job that took me from the community center to a more, in San Diego, there was this organization called the Community Congress of San Diego. And so I became affiliated as employed there also as a, I was trained to be the chief financial officer. So, I was doing that and I was happily going to classes. I didn't need to teach. I never thought about teaching. I heard what she said, but that was the end of it because I had this job. But then I also decided I want to go back to school to get my master's degree. And all this time, of course, in the universe, this was a time of nuclear affinity groups, and I belonged to one, and they were building this nuclear power plant on the coast here, which is now closed because it never should have been built in the first place. And I was very much into ecology. And so I left San Diego and went to Vermont and went to school at Goddard College in the master's program that they had there in social ecology. And I spent the next 5 years in Vermont and New Hampshire. And I finished the program there. And and that was great. I learned a lot. There were 5 major subject areas that we had to learn about, and then write, a master's thesis. And my master's thesis was on anarchy in organizations. So, and then while I was there, people wanted to do yoga. One of the 5 subjects was holistic health, and part of that also would include yoga. So I just taught the classmates what I knew and how I had learned also. So actually, when I got to Goddard and was placed in the dorm room, this was interesting also, I guess. On the bed was Light on Yoga. And I just looked at, and I had no idea where it came from or how it got there, but it was my bed.
Wow.
So, some things are not explainable in this life. And so that guided me from then on, and I'd been to those Iyengar Yoga classes for already 2 years, and then spent 5 years studying the book and practicing. And there was nobody then at those, as far as I knew, teaching Iyengar Yoga in Vermont at that time, in the late 70s, 80 and 81 to 83, I guess. I don't know, somewhere in there, in the 80s to 85, somewhere in there. And then decided to, I was with a man at that time, and we decided to have a child. My son was born in 86 here in San Diego. So we had come back to San Diego because his family lived here. And So I was here. 2 weeks after my son was born, his father got a job in LA, so I had to go back to LA. And we lived up on a mountaintop in a park because he was the park manager. So, when we had been in San Diego, I had returned to the Iyengar Yoga Center where Mary had been teaching, but now she had left and gone to the East Coast, and but continued to take classes there. And of course, did Iyengar Yoga all during my pregnancy, and then when we moved to LA, the teacher here, Ariane, had said, you know, you should connect with Bonnie Anthony in the LA area. She actually lives in Pasadena, and study with her. So she became my mentor. And she taught me about teaching. She also had a fairly close relationship with BKS, Iyengar, and Gita. Guruji had stayed at her house during conventions that were held, or when he was ever on the West Coast. And I had been there, you know, also. So in 86, I received 86, my son was born. 88, I received my introductory level certificate. So now I had been studying almost 10 years, 9 years.
And within that time, Gloria, what was that relationship with the mentor like? Because when did the certification structure really become solidified in terms of the system that we've just left with the intro 1 and 2? When did that happen?
Oh, not for a while. When I was certified, how I was certified was there were certain people in the country who Guruji had given permission to certify, to assess people and let him know who they were, and then he would send them, you know, a certificate, or we sent certificates. I don't remember exactly how that occurred, but there were 3 teachers, I believe, maybe more, I don't remember exactly, in Southern California, and a few in Northern California and on the East Coast, who were given Mary, Ariane, Bonnie, Francie Ricks. I don't exactly remember who might be others, a couple people who are no longer in the system. And what they would do is when you decided that perhaps you were ready to be assessed, they came to your class. Someone came to your class and took the class, but they didn't tell you when they were coming. They just showed up. A much better way to do assessment. You know, but the whole, you were mentoring. There were no teacher training programs. And so they came to your class, and if they decided you were teaching Iyengar Yoga and you were appropriate at that and everything, they passed you. So and then you could teach and say you were an Iyengar Yoga teacher. So the mentoring at that time, I would go to Bonnie's classes, drive all the way to Pasadena, from, I don't know where we were, North Hollywood or something, and twice a week, I think, and take class. And sometime in the middle of class, she would say, you know, Gloria, whoever else she was working with, teach this pose. And then we would talk about it after the class, if there was something to talk about. You know, there's always something to talk about. So, and that was really the program. And then she, you know, let me know that, let them, and I think she actually let them know that they should go and assess me. So it's very different then. So, and at that time, by that time, in the late 80s, there were already regional associations. I think at the time there may have been 8 or 9 had popped up around the United States, and they were fairly independent. Of course they were independent, you know, and they chose their areas and they chose their territory, and they had to become 501c3, that's nonprofit educational associations. And but everybody, all associations had the same purpose, and that was to teach, promote the art, science, and philosophy of yoga according to the teachings of BKS Iyengar. So when I got to LA, there was already an association there, and that association actually ran an institute, the Iyengar Yoga Institute of Los Angeles. And there was an institute at that time also in San Francisco. And then there was one being established on the East Coast, and they were all, I think, pretty much founded with Mary Dunn's help, encouragement. And I didn't know a lot about that. You know, I heard people talking. I knew there was strife, or whatever you want to call it. And so after I was certified, Bonnie had suggested that I go to a board meeting and, you know, offer whatever I could, having been in nonprofit organizations since the 70s in San Diego. So, so I did. And then it was decided to hold a convention. There had already been two conventions, Iyengar Yoga conventions. The first one was an international one in 1984 in San Francisco. And then the next one, I think, was in 87, which was in Boston. And then the next, so every 3 years, the next one, 90, we agreed would be held in San Diego, at least on the West Coast. Then eventually it was decided in San Diego. And we had a group of 6 coordinators to put this together. So there was, you know, a nice group of people working together to make this happen. And so that happened. And there's so much that went into all this. I don't even know what to include, what not to include. So,
well, Gloria, one of the things that you mentioned as being very important for you was the mentorship component. And I heard you also mention that the way in which they assessed by just coming to your class was something that really was beneficial, or that you felt was really beneficial at that time. What are some of your thoughts after having been in the system for so long regarding mentorship, or how do you approach mentorship within the context of your own teachings?
well, you know, it's very different now because we're on Zoom. And I may have a class that I call a mentor class, but all the people in that class have studied with me for years. And so I can, I think I can work with them online. New people, I really don't take new people into that class. And I do have another class that's more a beginning mentor class, I guess you could say. But I've worked with those people. They just live in a different city. But I've gone there and taught for several times, many times. My colleague Aileen lived there in Las Vegas. And so I've known those students, and I know that the few of them, and there were 3 of them, and they really wanted to study, and Aileen was spending more time in Israel. And so I agreed to work with them online on the condition that they attend class. So, and, Zoom made it very easy for them to attend class. So before all this happened, I was actually going to Las Vegas, for a weekend to be with them once every other month. But to really mentor, you have to be in the class, be in the room, be with the people who think they want to teach. I think one of the hardest things, and I know it's hard, is to be able to say to somebody after they've studied for years as students, they're great students. Some people just are not meant to be teachers, and it's okay. Guruji said he was a student his whole life. Gitaji would tell you the same thing. Prashant says that also. Be a student. Abhijata says the same. We are all students. You can't possibly know the vastness of this subject even one lifetime, or be able to apply all of it in all of its nooks and crannies, and understand it all. So be a student, and be a student first. If you think about teaching, like teaching elementary school or teaching any level of school, elementary school, you have to love little kids. Okay, that's the first thing. And you have to love helping them to learn, or get joy out of the fact that they're learning, and they're getting joy out of that fact also. And when that's not happening, stop teaching. Teachers who teach specific subjects, I think, they have to love the subject. How do you love the subject? You study first. You learn about the subject. You engage in all the nooks and crannies of the subject as best as you can, either with guidance, or, if you happen to be a self-learner, you can do that, on your own to a degree, I guess, and working in groups and with other and fellow students, and having conversations, especially about yoga philosophy is really important, having that interaction. So if you're studying a particular subject, like I said, you have to love that subject to want to teach that subject and be good at teaching that subject. You can't just teach a subject because, oh, everybody's doing yoga, I think I'll teach yoga. Or everybody's teaching math, I think I'll teach math. It just doesn't happen. So it doesn't work that way, I don't think. You have to be engaged in the subject and want to help others learn the subject. And Guruji says the subject of yoga starts with learning about yourself, about your own physicality, and all the dimensions of that, those layers, which, when you first start, you know nothing about, but it doesn't matter. Because like that first class I attended, course, the teacher was wonderful, but something happens to you inside that makes you want to be there the next class. And nothing distracts you from wanting to be at that class. So this is called disassociation, vairagya. So the vairagya, we see of it as restraint or but in life, what it is that you make a decision to be someplace or to do something, you do it. Whatever else comes your way. Your friends may say, oh, let's go to breakfast early. We'll have a breakfast meeting and then we'll go to work. And you have to be willing to say no, because it's more important for you to be in that class or in anything. If it was more important for me to be at that meeting, then I wouldn't be in the class. But you make a commitment to be in class, whatever number of times a week on a certain day of the week, and that's what you do. So you're separating yourself in a way. To do yoga, you're separating yourself. And for many people early on, I think, at least for me, for many years, you might be separated from family and friends because they don't understand this. What is now taken for granted as if everybody does yoga. We know everybody doesn't, but it's so popular. It's such a moneymaker that it's no longer seen as something odd or unusual, or you're getting into some kind of a cult, or, as it was in the 70s, even the early 80s, and before that, I'm sure. So, so in that respect, it's not an easy path. Now, whether you consciously choose that path or not, for some reason you're on it. I can't say I consciously chose it. It was there. Something inside felt this is absolutely correct, the correct place to be. So who knows what that is? Past life, something that takes you, I don't know.
This concept of being on a path, Gloria, I think is really something important when we think about Iyengar Yoga, but also when we think about any form of spiritual sadhana, that you take it up as a path that you do no matter what, and that you carve that time out for your sadhana no matter what, and that through that studentship and that student and mentor relationship, that something occurs within either yourself or within the mentor that says, hey, I think you should take this a step further and consider becoming a teacher within the system or whatever it is you're doing. And what I want to ask you in relation to that is, I know that you've been an assessor before, and you've been a mentor, but you've also been an assessor. And what is that thing that you look for when you are assessing a student in order for you to feel a sense of confidence and ease regarding that student carrying on the legacy of BKS Iyengar?
Oh boy. It depends on the level that I'm assessing. What you expect out of someone out of high school is not the same as you expect from someone who has just graduated college or graduated, a master's program or a doctorate or a specialty beyond doctors. Guruji would often relate, he would say level 1 is high school, or introductory level was graduating from high school. So when you think about it that way, but how it relates to his teaching, because he's always insistent, has always, as long as I've known him and been in contact with him, which started in 1988 when I was fortunate enough to be able to be sponsored to go to Pune. And that's a long story too. Mixing methods is unacceptable to him. And it's interesting because when you assess, you can see when people are mixing methods. It's very difficult to start in some other school of yoga and you may have been there for years, and then decided to take up Iyengar Yoga and think that immediately you can, become an Iyengar Yoga teacher. It's almost impossible. Impressions follow you. They follow you, and they come out in our teaching. They come out in they come out in our practice. You can't be teaching Iyengar Yoga in one class and some other school of yoga in another class in the same building. It just doesn't, but that was his insistence. So, we all, those of us who assess and become teachers, we really have to understand what distinguishes Iyengar Yoga from other schools of yoga. And there's all kinds of things you can look for, starting from the base, understanding direction. I mean, he gave a whole list of things, knowing that the foundation of Iyengar Yoga is standing poses and inversions, and many other schools eliminate the inversion. So, you have, and the teachers have to be strong in those asanas, which is why, to be assessed, you have to have been a student of Iyengar Yoga for a certain number of years. You have to be recommended by one of your teachers or who you consider your mentor, perhaps, that they feel you're ready. Hopefully, therefore, you have been teaching in front of them. Guruji at one time said he doesn't want anybody teaching, calling it Iyengar Yoga, until they were certified. So you could teach, and our recommendation always was that you're teaching under the guidance of a certified Iyengar Yoga teacher, which means a lot of work for the teacher or the mentor, or that the mentor has confidence, knowledge that what the mentoree is going to be teaching, they've taught in front of them and can teach, and not taught to nobody, but to taught to other people in the class, in a class that, let's say, I would be teaching, and I'm asking them to teach. So, so that gives you the confidence that they'll be able to teach. So I don't know if I've answered the question. I've already forgotten it.
Well, you definitely have laid a great foundation for that. The question was, what do you look for
right.
as an assessor in terms of a person who you're assessing to say that this person knows and has Iyengar Yoga in their bones?
So one of the ways is how they practice. In Iyengar Yoga assessment, you have to do a demonstrated practice. And poses called out, and the teachers are watching you. And that's true even in the new system. Part of the new system is we all practice together, assessors and candidates, based on a particular situation that we're given, let's say. And then there's a demonstrated practice of everything except inversions, not everything, but as many poses as possible on the syllabi that you're assessing for. And then separate, now anyway, separate was an inversion practice, which the candidate designs themselves and has a certain amount of time to, and they just do their practice and the assessors will be watching. Previously, the inversions were part of the demonstrated practice. So the demonstrated practice was almost 2 hours and sometimes longer. And now that's kind of divided up into 2 separate teachings, and which is great, fine. But are you at that level 1? Are you strong in your standing poses? Just want to say, do you glow in those standing poses? There's a certain, you're steady, you're stable, you're open, you understand. You're properly aligned, right side, left side, tailbone to the crown of the head, all the things that you would look for as a teacher, we're looking for, and your teaching should do that also. Your teaching doesn't come from here. It doesn't come from a list you make of points. It doesn't come because you're gathering points. And everybody gathers points. It's interesting because what you think you can't remember up here, your cellular body does. If you actually took it in when you were given that instruction, which makes you have to be in class totally present. That's part of alignment, is being present in the class, in the classroom, whether you're teaching or you are a student in the class. You have to be present, you can't let the mind wander, and you're there to learn. Prashant would tell us, and Guruji told us also, class is where you learn. Home is where you go home and practice. Like learning a musical instrument, you go to a lesson and you do the lesson. And then the instructor shows you some new chords or whatever, or a new song, and you start playing it, and it doesn't come out so good. So the teacher says, go home and practice, and we'll go over this again next week. And so, as young people, every day you would practice. You practice your piano or your violin or your clarinet, whatever you took up. Typing, you have to practice every day to get fast and accurate. You have to have a home practice. And that's what shines through, not just being in class week to week, or even if you went to class every day, it's not the same. And then in your teaching, we teach from the foundation to the head. So whatever's on the floor is the foundation, and whatever's up in the air is close to heaven, and that's where you're aiming for. So, and we teach, like I said, to who's in front of us. So you're not rattling off a bunch of instructions. Sometimes we do as reminders, because no one could think that fast. But when you're first teaching at that beginning level, you have to teach in such a way that the students are going to comprehend, grasp, hold on to what you're teaching. So teach something, take a breath. Teach the next, take a breath. So the student has enough time to actually make go into their head, go through their body, make the thing happen. And as a teacher, you have to see this. And as an assessor, you can see this happening. You can see this happening. So as an assessor, you have to be as attentive as you want the teacher to be attentive to the teaching. So you go to the next level, and Guruji gave us guidelines, the old system, there was a syllabus for each, and that syllabus really hasn't changed. A few things have been switched around to make life interesting and more for the young people, because there's this idea that only the young start at the intro level, but that's not true. We have, and maybe Iyengar Yoga, has what people think is a negative, I don't know why, because a lot of older people. But if you look at the older people who are in Iyengar Yoga and what they can accomplish and the alignment that they have and how they feel about their lives, and they're not crying because they're 70 anymore, and not wishing they were younger, and they're not going to get facelifts and, whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. And teachers should not feel that because they don't have 20 and 30-year-olds in their classes, that there's something wrong with them. Again, teach who's in front of you. Help them, that's our job. Whoever comes to you. And what happens when you first start and nobody comes to you? Yay, you have an opportunity to practice. You have that space. You were going to be there in the room anyway, teaching, and nobody's there, practice. And then for the next level, he gave other instructions, and he guided us with a syllabus for reading, of things to read, and asanas to do, and asanas to practice, and pranayamas to learn and to practice, everything to learn and to practice, and to learn what on the previous syllabi is helping you to accomplish or practice these new asanas on the next syllabus and the next syllabus and the next syllabus, but not to be jumping ahead, because then you miss those stages. And even in Light on Yoga, some of the asanas have stages. They have stages of learning. Some of them have 4 stages, and there's 4 pictures. Every picture is a stage, and you have to learn them. Uttita Trikonasana. From Tadasana, the first step is jumping your feet apart. There's a lot to learn in Uttita Hasta Padasana. Standing on your own 2 feet with your feet apart is different than standing on your own 2 feet with your feet together. Arms out to the side. How to hold those arms up so they don't get tired. Is your head on straight? Is the crown of your head over your tailbone, or your tailbone under the crown of your head? All those things to be able to see and understand. Parshvahasta Padasana, next stage of Uttita Trikonasana, turning your feet, without turning your torso, without changing the structure of your pose, keeping yourself even on both sides again, and finally going into that movement of going into Uttita Trikonasana and observing yourself. And you start with simple things, press your back heel, maybe press the front foot, big toe mound. Are they both happening? Draw the femurs up into the sockets. Can the teacher see that happening? Yes. Teacher can see that happen. You're a teacher. You can see that happening. Yes? Yes. Is the tailbone in the right place? Is the head in the right place? If not, everybody comes out. You might even do the other side before you do correction, or you can correct right away. It depends how you choose to do that. Teaching both sides gives the student the opportunity to observe themselves on both sides, because at the same time, you're teaching them how to observe themselves. And if nothing else, yoga is self-observation. Yes, you can do all the poses that you want. You may do them, fabulously, but if you're not paying attention, you're not aware, you're not conscious of being and becoming that pose, It's not yoga. And so and we expect different things at different levels. And so even in the written exam, questions are asked that are appropriate for those levels. In assessment at the junior level, what was the junior level, now level 2, level 1, there's nobody with any major problems. There's nobody with any problems, and there's no menstruating ladies in class. At the next level, there are, and you have to take care of them. So now here's a teacher who has to be able to, be in 2 places, if not 3 at one time. Next level, here in the new system, it's level 3. In the old system, it was the senior levels. Senior levels, Guruji in 2009 said, it's the level that you can be doing yoga therapy. If you have been doing yoga therapy approved, because you were allowed to do that when you were junior 3, you can continue to do that. If you weren't junior 3 by that time, I think it was junior 3, might have been junior 2 for 2 years, then you had to wait till senior to actually named that class Iyengar Yoga therapy class, or you did remedial teaching. So there's different things expected at each level. I don't know much about other systems. I think that may be true for some of them. I can't speak to that because I don't know. Those are things I look, so, when there are problems in the class, is that teacher taking care of the problem person and able to teach the rest of the class? When you're doing adjustments or giving a verbal correction, do you stay with the student until the correction is made so you can see that they've made that correction? Are your eyes on them and you're still teaching the class? There's all this stuff to look at, how we might even, we haven't talked about this yet, but I'll jump in. How we assess whether a teacher is capable, is ready to provide, remedial therapy teaching. We don't actually test for that. Do I think we should be? Yes. We test for it on a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. We ask certain questions, they may fill in a table, or they may, do, I think one year we asked them to actually submit paperwork on pictures and everything on a specific case. That's one way. But the association itself, once the National Association came into being, which was 1991 after the 1990 convention, which was when Guruji decided that in the United States we needed an Iyengar Yoga National Association. And he asked those of us who were organizing that convention to do what is necessary to make that happen. So I was assigned to that. And I certainly did not want that. I wanted it to be democratic, because Guruji was a Democrat. I mean, he believed in democracy. He believed that everybody has a choice. We all have a choice. Whether we choose good or evil comes from someplace. So we presented to everybody who was there in their packet that they got, if an Iyengar Yoga National Association, or do you think an Iyengar Yoga National Association should be established? And if you do, what do you think is its purpose, aside from what were the purpose, the goals and objectives? Because all associations that I said earlier had the same purpose. And some were listed and lots of space given for anybody else's input. And then the papers were given to Peggy Kelly, and she collated everything. And towards the end of the convention, those people who wanted to, they came to an organizing meeting, and overwhelmingly, the people felt there should be an Iyengar Yoga Association, and that its main purpose was assessing for certification and communication between Pune and the associations. So that made Guruji very happy. And he, we were all staying together at Bonnie's, at a house close to the convention center, Steve Smith's house, actually. And so he came up to me and he said, Gloria, I'm very happy, about this convention. The community has come together. That was our goal as 6 people. And he said, and he didn't teach at that convention. Teachers taught in little rooms, and Guruji went around to every room and listened and intervened and did what he wanted to do. And so then he said, I think I'll teach the last day of class, because no one was expecting this. And I said, oh, and don't tell anybody. Okay. Which meant having to make sure we had the room for everybody to teach, for him to teach and everyone to be in. And all the props that were in all these different rooms moved to this room. And this room, we didn't have a room. That large room, which we all met in and had dinner in and everything, was not seen to be needed on the last day. So, so I had to find the manager of the place and said, we need this room. And he said, well, lucky you, it's available, but it will cost you this much money. Probably the most expensive class anyone has ever been to. But he was really happy with everybody. And I think people were happy that he taught that class. It's actually on video, so people can, I think, get that. This is my dog, Pepper. She only has one eye. She's a rescue, right? And she's spoiled rotten.
She's a beautiful dog.
She's a cutie. She's a real cutie, but she is spoiled. She goes to the spa. She gets blueberry facials. She's very spoiled.
So Gloria, we've spoken about so much today, and we've spoken about your journey with Iyengar Yoga, and also some of your thoughts regarding teaching and mentoring and even studentship, and what all of those things have meant to you over the years. If you could speak to teachers who are either newly certified, I know that we just had a cycle of assessment within the Zoom context. If you could speak to teachers who are newly certified, who are really wanting to stay true to the teachings of Iyengar Yoga and stay true to this tradition, what would you say to them?
Practice. You have to have a daily practice no matter what. So when I hear young people saying, oh, I teach, 14 classes a week, I just go, no way. And I understand the need to earn a living. But when we first start out and we're first certified, you can't expect to earn a living teaching yoga of any, yoga. So you have to have other income. You have to have another job, so to speak. I did, certainly did. And I had a son, and by that time I was a single mother. So, and I was fortunate. His dad took him a couple days a week, but I had to have another job. There's something you want to do, and in order to do it, you also have to do something else. It's fine. Make sure that whatever else you're doing is good work, is in line with the yamas and niyamas. You're not doing anything illegal or anything. Yeah. Practice and, stay with your mentor. You have someone that you can talk to, and you can talk about philosophy or trouble you're having with an asana, or many of mine say I'm having trouble with the student. It's, they have this problem or this problem, or even a relationship problem with their student, and, sometimes that happens, we even mentor and students grow apart, or something happens, but at least talk it over and let the mentor know that things aren't going, or the mentor should also let the student know, this is not going well with me. I think you need to find someone else to help you. Or sometimes the student, how do I say it, outgrows the mentor. It's very possible. And it's very wonderful. It's also very, very wonderful that your student has progressed beyond your own capabilities and knowledge, of course. And you've helped them to do that. That's wonderful. Be patient, practice, be observant, first of yourself, take care of yourself, or you can't take care of others. Another Guruji gem. Yeah. It's the first time I met BKS Iyengar in yoga in person was in Pune in 1988 when I went there for the first time. And we were in some supine posture on the floor. I don't even remember. And he came over to me and he looked down and he said, didn't I write you and tell you to put a weight on that sternum clavicular joint? And I nodded and he said, well, so I had to get up and get a weight. Okay. And how did that come about? I had popped my sternoclavicular joint, and the teacher I was working with at the time, we did everything we could think of, but it wouldn't go back in. So I had x-rays taken, because bones you can see, right? Sent them to Pune. Guruji wrote back and said, if this woman is capable enough to do the following, it will help. Well, luckily I was able to do those asanas and it popped right back in. Now he never saw my face. Didn't really know my name, or maybe he did, I don't know, but in a class of over 90 people were there, I guess 80, 90 people. lying on the floor, he recognized my bones. So I had to tell that story because I'm glad that came up, to tell that story because he's an amazing man, an amazing man. And my other association with him was mostly about organizations and organizations around the world. He somehow made me in charge of that. I don't know. It's very difficult to do. Anyway.
Gloria, this has truly been a pleasure and an honor to be able to sit and speak with you and to hear about your life and your stories and everything. So I just wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here and sharing so generously today.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you for asking me, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Gloria. And for those of our listeners and viewers out there, if this is your first time joining the Mychal Bryan podcast, or if this is your 100th time, I just want to thank you for continuing to support this work and continuing to listen to these stories from these amazing teachers, because it's your support that makes this possible. So once again, if you want to share this interview with others, please feel free to share this interview with all of your yoga and mindfulness loving friends, because more people need to hear about stories like this. So until next time, I'm your host, Mychal A. Bryan, wishing you love and peace and hope. Until we meet again, have a good one. Bye-bye. Gloria Goldberg.
Oh, you're gone.
Thank you so much for this, Gloria. This was really amazing.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for, giving teachers the opportunity to tell their stories, I guess, and I hope it comes across how important this particular subject is in our lives.
Definitely.